Hey, welcome to our community project work time. All of the ninth graders are together today with C2 advisors who are going to help you get launched on figuring out how to focus your big idea for your community project. Don't worry too much how much you've figured out yet. This exercise today is going to help you hone in on your idea and start to come up with some realistic ways that you might put a project together. So I'm going to talk you through a tool that's going to help you find a focus, and it uses something called the global context. You've probably seen the posters around school a little bit. You might have had teachers talk about these in classes. A lot of your units in your classes use a global context, and all it does, all the global context is like a real thing that happens in the real world. So that learning isn't just happening in books and on computers, but it's about real problems and real solutions that real people need to use. So there's a bunch of different ways about thinking about the real world, and we're going to think about your project and how it connects to the real world. So I'm going to use an example from a group that actually did a community project here at North a few years ago, and they used this tool to help them think through how did they want to focus their project. So they knew that they wanted to do something with books and something with little kids because they liked both of those things. And they thought that was important for kids to read and have access to books, but they weren't sure what they wanted to do with books and kids. So this tool is going to help our group. So there are 6 of these little kind of posters, and each of them have a different question on them, different way of thinking about how we are in the world. And the first one has a bunch of questions about who am I and who are we? And those questions are going to be our starting point. So our group is going to look through and read a bunch of these questions. And the one that sort of stands out to them is, how can we encourage healthy lifestyle choices? Now, when we take that question and we combine it with the idea of books and kids, one project idea could be trying to teach people about the importance of reading in their daily lives. So we might make posters that we send over to the elementary schools that encourage kids to read 20 minutes a day, and those posters might have facts on them, and we might do a digital campaign or something, but we're going to do something teaching about reading as a daily habit, as a healthy lifestyle choice. That's our first idea. We have 5 more to come up with. So now we're thinking about the big question is, what is the meaning of where and when? And all of the questions on this piece of paper have to do with that big question. The one that's jumping out at my group is, how can knowing what our limits are and understanding how we can adapt help us solve problems? That's kind of a cool question, thinking about, okay, here's the materials I have. How can I adapt them to solve the problem I have? So if I were going to use that, put it together with kids and books, what if we used like donated art materials or old magazines, so found materials, and we hosted a little craft morning and kids made books out of found materials. They had to adapt those old used materials to make something brand new. That could be kind of fun. Now we're going to think about our third idea. Read through all of the questions about how do we understand the world that we live in. And one of the questions that jumps out is, how can we create or use digital tools to help us solve problems? Well, one of the people in my group really likes to make little ebooks on their iPad, and they think it would be fun to teach kids how to do that. And then kids could get a copy, like a little PDF copy of the book they wrote on their iPad. And we could maybe either go to the elementary school or host a Saturday morning where we taught kids how to do this. Books and kids and digital tools could be super fun. Now we're going to think of our fourth idea. We read through the questions. How can we explore more about what we have in common? Boy, that's a really interesting idea. Like, all of us in our group have a lot of differences, but we also like to celebrate what we have in common, and that could be fun to do with kids. So what if we did a project where we found books about different cultures, and then we got kids together and we did a story time where they read and learned about kids from other cultures and then talked about what they had in common. That could be a fun project. And then we get to our question, how and why do we express ourselves? That whole big idea of personal and cultural expression. Lots of questions on this page that are cool. One of them that jumps out at us is, how does creativity express who we are and help us solve problems? How can creativity? Well, we could have kids write and create their own books. That would be fun. So that's another idea. And then we get to our last poster, which is about how we share the planet, fairness and development. How do we make sure things are equitable? And one of the questions that our group all really likes is, can I focus on the idea of imagining a hopeful future? Boy, that's a cool question, and I want to feel hopeful. So I really like to think about that. What if we found books about a hopeful future, and then we put together a little peace fair, and we invited kids, and we had a story time, and then each kid left this peace fair with a book about a kid hero? That could be a really cool project. So we've come up with 6 different ideas centered around these 6 different ways of thinking about the world. And now we're going to decide which one of those 6 gives us the most energy, feels the most possible for us to really do, raises more questions for us. Like, we just feel excited about it. So our group said, we really like this idea of imagining a hopeful future. That's the one we want to focus on for our project, at least for now. So we're going to try to put together this peace fair with a story time, and then have each kid take a book about kid heroes. So that's the one our group is going to start with. And we're going to start by coming up with 3 different questions that we could explore so that we can learn more, figure out, is this really the project we want to do, and what would it take? So one of my group members says, well, where are we even going to find books about a hopeful future? I know a lot of books about dystopias, but are there books where there's hope? And then somebody else says, yeah, I like the idea of a peace fair, but where are we going to find the kids? Like, is there a preschool we could talk to? Could we connect with our YMCA? Could we talk to the elementary schools? Where would we locate kids who would want to do this story time? And then our other group member says, well, and we're going to need books. We want to send books home with kids. Like, could we find people who would donate books and supplies for this peace fair? So there's lots more questions to answer, but those are 3 that jump into our minds right away. And then the last thing we're going to talk about in our group is, if we hit a roadblock with this idea, if it turns out like we just can't raise the books, there's too many problems, we can't find a place to hold our peace fair, we don't have to abandon our idea totally. We could go back to this worksheet and say, well, we can't do that one, but we could maybe do the campaign where we have kids make books out of used materials. Like, that would be easier. So then we're going to go through and say, here's our second choice idea. If the first one, we run into a roadblock, and if we run into a big roadblock that we can't get past with our second idea, we've got 4 more to go back to. So the point of this exercise is, number 1, to get you to think about, what could our big idea actually look like as a project? And then what are a bunch of different ways or different kinds of projects we could do around that one big idea, so that if you do run into an obstacle, you've got some backup ideas that will still let you focus on the problem that you really want to solve in the world. You have the rest of the time in WIN today to work with your group. You should have this doc. You only need 1 copy of this in your folder, and you can all 3 write in it, or you can have one of the group members type while all 3 of you brainstorm together. And then in your meeting with your community project supervisor, this is one of the documents your supervisor will look at with you, and you can talk through your questions, but it gives you a starting point to start investigating your project. So ask your C2 advisor or another group for help if you haven't found the doc yet, and just get it into your shared folder. Go to town, have a lot of fun, and there's going to be more WIN help sessions coming up next week and the week after. So if you need more time with this, or if you're struggling with it, there's lots of people around who are going to help. There's plenty of time to get this done. Thanks a lot, guys. Work hard.